otherwise they would go to hell, which these saints had themselves witnessed. And yet, notwithstanding such excellent evidence and such eyewitness accounts, which proceeded from the mouths of hundreds of thousands of dead saints, the Jews should not desist from their denial. I personally am not prepared to believe this. Therefore, if hundreds of thousands of saints and prophets and apostles, etc., who were dead, had really come to life and had come to the city to give evidence, they must undoubtedly have given unfavorable evidence. They could never have borne witness to the divinity of Jesus. This seems to be the reason why the Jews, having listened to the evidence of the dead, became confirmed in their unbelief. Jesus wanted to get them to believe in his divinity, but they, as a result of this evidence, denied that he was even a prophet. In short, such beliefs have a highly injurious and evil effect. The beliefs, namely, that one should say that these hundreds of thousands of dead persons, or any dead person before that time, had been brought back to life by Jesus, for the restoration to life of those dead did not serve any useful purpose. A person who has visited a far-off country and who comes to his hometown after several years of absence is naturally keen to tell the people of his strange experiences and to relate to them the wonderful stories of the land he has visited. He will not keep mum or be tongue-tied when he meets his people after a long period of separation. No, at such a time others also are keen to hasten to him and to question him about that land. And if perchance there comes to these people some poor and lowly person, humble in appearance, and who yet claims to be the king of the country, of which the principal town had been seen by these people, and who says that he is superior in his kingly rank even to such and such other king, the people always question such itinerants as to whether such and such a man, going about at that time in their country, is really the king of that land. And then those travelers, according as they have observed, make replies to such questions. This being so, the bringing of the dead to life by Jesus was, as I have stated before, worthy of being believed in case the evidence on which the dead must have been questioned, which questioning was natural, had led to some useful result. But here it is not so. Therefore, along with the supposition that the dead were brought back to life, one is compelled also to suppose that the dead did not give evidence favorable to Jesus, such as could lead one to believe in his truth. They rather gave evidence which added to the confusion. Would that, instead of truly human beings brought to life, some animal had been declared to have been restored to life? It would then have solved many difficulties. For example, if it had been said that Jesus had brought back to life several thousand bullocks, it would have been reasonable enough, and if in this case there had been raised the objection as to what the evidence of these dead animals had led to, one could have immediately answered that they were bullocks. They had no tongue to give favorable or unfavorable evidence. The dead, however, which Jesus brought back to life, were human beings. Suppose some of the Hindus were asked today whether, if 10 or 20 of their dead ancestors were restored to life and brought back to this world, and if they were to state that such and such a religion was the true religion, they would still have any doubt regarding the truth of that religion. They would never say so. Therefore, take it for certain that there is no man in the whole world who would persist in his unbelief and denial after a disclosure of this kind. I am sorry that in framing such stories the Sikhs of our country have fared better than Christians. The Sikhs have given proof of their astuteness in the art of inventing stories, for they state that their guru, Baba Nanak, once restored a dead elephant to life. Now this is a, quote, miracle, which is not open to the above objection. For the Sikhs can say the elephant had no tongue to speak with, that he should have borne witness in favor of or against Baba Nanak. In short, ordinary people endowed with little intellect are pleased with such miracles, but the wise become the target of other people's criticism and are thus worried over it. they are put to shame before those to whom such silly stories are being related. Now, as I bear the same feelings of love and sincerity toward Jesus as do the Christians, nay, I have a stronger attachment to him, for Christians do not know the man whom they praise, but I know him whom I praise, for I have seen him. Therefore, I proceed now to reveal the real nature of reports made in the Gospels, such as the report that at the time of the crucifixion all the dead saints had been restored to life and had come to the city. Therefore, let it be clearly understood that accounts like these are of the nature of kashf, or a vision seen after the crucifixion by some holy persons, that the dead saints had been brought back to life and had come to the city where they paid visits to the people. Just as dreams have their interpretation mentioned even in the Holy Book of God, for example, Joseph's dream had an interpretation, this vision also had to have an interpretation of its own, and this interpretation was that Jesus had not died on the cross, that God had rescued him from death on the cross. If the question were asked as to wherefrom did I get this interpretation, the answer is that leading authorities on the art of interpretation so stated, and all interpreters have borne witness to it by their experience. I quote here from the interpretation of a leading ancient authority on the art of interpretation, that is, the author of Tatirul Anam. Si Kitab Tatirul Anam fi Tabirul Manam by Qutbuz Zaman Shaykh Abdul Ghani al-Nablisi, page 289, which translated is that if anyone sees a dream or a vision of the nature of kashf, that the dead have come out of the graves and have made for their homes, the interpretation is that a prisoner would be released from his bondage and that he would be rescued from the hands of his persecutors. The context shows that this prisoner would be a great and a high personage. Now, it will be noticed how this interpretation applies with reason to Jesus. One can readily understand that the dead saints, having been brought to life, appeared to be making for the city to point out this fact, so that the wise might know that Jesus had been saved from death on the cross. Likewise, many more references in the Gospels clearly point out that Jesus did not die on the cross. He was saved from it and migrated to another land. But I think what I have stated is sufficient for the unprejudiced. It is possible some may be entertaining in their hearts the objection that the Gospels repeatedly say that Jesus died on the cross, and then, having been brought back to life, went up to heaven. This kind of objection I have already briefly answered, but I might say again that Jesus, peace be on him, meeting the disciples after his crucifixion, his traveling up to Galilee, eating bread and meat, his display of wounds on his body, staying a night with the disciples at Emmaus, fleeing secretly from Pilate's jurisdiction, emigrating from that place as was the practice of prophets, and traveling under the shadow of fear, all these events are conclusive that he did not die on the cross, that his body retained its mortal character, and that it had undergone no change. There is no evidence in the Gospels that anyone saw Jesus ascend to heaven, and even if there had been such evidence, it would have been unworthy of credence, for making mountains out of molehills and magnifying small things into big seems to be a habit with the Gospel writers. For example, if one happens to say that Jesus is the Son of God, another sets about making him into a full-fledged God, the third invests him with power over the whole universe, and the fourth bluntly says that he is everything and that there is no other God besides him. In short, exaggerations carry them very far away. If one considers the vision in which the dead were seen to come out of their graves and to make for the city, one would notice that this vision had been given its outer and apparent interpretation, so far as to say that the dead had literally risen out of their graves and come to the city of Jerusalem, where they had paid visits to their people. Now, just see how a feather has been made into a crow